Hello, Hannah. Welcome to the interview. I am very sorry that you couldn't make it to Broumov due to this pandemic situation, obviously. You should have been right now on residential stay in Literature House, but at least you are in your studio at home in Hamburg at online residency. My first question is, what would you like to use this dedicated time for?
I'm also very happy that I got the opportunity to do the online residency because, actually I was supposed to come to Broumov a year ago for the residency, and then we postponed it to this year, hoping that it would be better then, but obviously we all know it's not. Yeah. I'm really happy to get the opportunity to do the online residency because it's always really nice and good for an artist to have this time and also financial aid to really concentrate on a topic for me. Last year I actually applied with a book that came out in November, so it's not that I'm working on, but it's kind of after finishing such a big project. I feel like it's really good to have a little bit of time to think about what to do next and to do research and read and really look into what might be a good topic and how to go about a new topic or a new book. So this is really helpful to take a little bit of this time away. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine that for you, because you are a graphic novelist, and that means that you are working very long time on one topic. So it can be really demanding, and it has to be really important to have this in between time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I haven't, because the last book was my debut book, so I haven't actually finished a book yet until then. But such a big book, right? It's kind of like a birth of something. And it feels, I didn't know what the feeling would be afterwards. And it feels really strange because before you have this task before you, but I think what you forget is that the work of actually finding something else that you want to spend so much time working on, that also costs time to kind of think and read and stuff like that. So it's a difficult journey, I think, to find something new.
Yeah, I think many of illustrators and comic book authors will agree with you, definitely. Yeah. And can you tell us more about your first book?
Yeah, so my first book was kind of a family history. The topic of it was, but also a very German historic topic, because it was about conscientious objectors to the military service in Germany. So just a little background for this, so you understand this. Germany had a draft, so military service was compulsory and since 1956. And on top of the draft, they also put in a system where the people who were drafted and who objected to the military service, so it is in the German basic law that you can object to the military service as a German citizen. But if you objected to the service because you were a pacifist, because of religion or any of that, you had to go to a 3-stage process. So it was like trials where they would see if you would really, if you were really allowed to object to the military service on the basis of your conscience, because it says in the basic law, nobody can be forced to serve in the military against their conscience. So these trials basically were there to test the conscience of the applicants, which is kind of something that is completely nonsense, because you can't prove what anybody thinks. So these trials were really just humiliating way of humiliating these conscientious objectors, basically. And my uncle was a conscientious objector in the 1970s, and he was denied his status as an objector. So then he had to go to the military, and there he committed suicide after 4 months, because he was a very convinced pacifist, and as a pacifist serving in the military was completely against everything he believed in. And and the book is kind of about this struggle against the system, that denies you your right as a citizen, also about being 19 years old and really standing for something or really wanting to make a point about something. And then also obviously about a family tragedy and how this tragedy kind of stays in the roots of this family in a way. So yeah, it has like these three storylines in a way.
And can you tell us maybe like what was the testing about? Because I can't like imagine it very well. Like they asked him some questions, or how was it?
Yeah, so they, like I said, there were 3 stages, and the third one was a little bit easier because they were actually sitting in front of real lawyers and judges. So it was kind of like a actual court. But the first 2 ones were basically 3 people that were appointed by the Ministry of Defense. So they were kind of biased in a way. And so just as and these questionings would go for like 2 hours. So it was a really long time. And a question that would be asked, for example, would be, you're going, this was a really famous one, and almost everybody was asked it. You're going to the park with your girlfriend and or boyfriend, and then somebody attacks her or him. And you happen to have a weapon. What would you do? Would you shoot this person, the attacker, or would you not do it? And then if the conscientious objector basically said, well, I would shoot him, and I would call it self-defense because they attacked my partner, then the trial would say, well, then you can basically also go to the armed forces because then you can't be against violence with a weapon if you would do that. And if you said, I wouldn't shoot the attacker, I wouldn't attack back, they would say, well, this is not believable. We don't believe you. Your application is rejected, basically. So it wasn't always like this, but in most cases it was like this. It was kind of, there were no right or wrong answers. You could basically, it was just luck, basically. So yeah.
It sounds like some kind of absurd theater game or
absurd
play.
Absurd is the best word, I think, that I always, it's the word that I thought about most, that in this like country where so much horrible things happened during the Second World War in the country, in the system, that here is a trial procedure like this that is so against the human being or the human mind would be implemented. And I think it was really absurd. I think so too.
Mm-hmm. And how did you know about this story? Because you didn't meet your uncle, right? It wasn't possible. But did he leave some notes?
Actually, the only way I found out about it is because my family, Hermann killed himself on 74, and I came about it I was born in 1990. So there was a big different age difference. And when I was born, there wasn't really that everybody would talk about it constantly. It wasn't really a topic anymore, I think. But after his suicide, the family published his obituary in a German newspaper, in 2 German newspapers actually. And his obituary is very political. So it really lists the last dates of his life, and that he was rejected by these trials, that he was then rejected again after he went to the hospital of the armed forces to say that he was depressed, that he couldn't serve. They rejected him, and then he killed himself. And all this is listed in the obituary. So it's very specific. And that was, I think, the thing I saw first, or I came about first. And then, and this left open a lot of questions, because I didn't know about any of this happening in Germany at that time. It is very not something that was talked about a lot. It kind of forgotten. And so that's then this left questions that I then tried to answer through historic research and research in documents and all this.
Yeah, you are right, because I was very surprised about this topic as well, because I didn't know that this was happening. And I wanted to ask you as well, how was it for your family to read it again and live it through again?
Yeah, I think it was problematic for some. I mean, it is obviously traumatic to go through something like this then again, also because after it was published in the 70s, Hermann's obituary, there was a big press outcry, kind of. There were some people on the side of the family, on Hermann's side, and they were really trying to push for these trials to be abolished. That was mostly. But there were also some that basically said he would have killed himself anyway, and this is this is a political statement in a way. Like these are communists, basically. Not like this, but you know, there was always like this: the communists are trying to undermine us and stuff like that. So I think, the draft was a really political question. It was so obviously there was a lot of that, and I think because of this bad press and this attention that they, I think, didn't expect at the time. I think there was the thought of, oh, do we have to go through this again now? And then there's again a lot of attention on this topic. And my aunt said something like, because there was a big review in a newspaper, and she opened the paper and there was the story. So I think this must be, kind of taking the pain out again. But also, I heard a lot of statements that it was actually something that also kind of, how do you say, revisited it and kind of gave a little sense to the whole story. Because if you kind of put it away and never think about it again, and this way to see that it's like such a systemic problem, and that how these trials might have been for Hermann and how he might have felt and stuff, and that there were so many young men going through it. I think this is also kind of, in a way, healing, to know and to read about, and kind of then to maybe...
I guess it must be relieving for, as well, other families, because in other families, there has to be people like that as well. So it can be healing, I guess, for them. Definitely.
Yeah, I also got a lot of letters from people who also went through the trials, or had family who went through them. And I think it's exactly that. I think it's kind of to see that you are not alone in something, and to also see that that what happened to you is kind of reckoned in a way. I think that can be helpful. Yeah,
this is really important and serious topic. And your book is proving that comic books are no longer just for children, or no longer it's belongs to fantasy world or superheroes or something like that. Do you somehow feel that it's getting better, this reputation, slowly in Germany?
I mean, Germany is very slow to accept, or was very slow. I think now, actually, also through, it might just be a feeling, I don't have numbers for this, but I feel like through these historic topics in graphic novels, that is something that I think the German press is really interested in. That's how I feel, or how I saw it in recent years. Also, I mean, there were a lot of graphic novels coming out in Germany that were also kind of looking at the Nazi history, for example, or the personal histories of Germans and stuff. So I think these topics are really represented a lot in the German comic market, but also others. And I feel like in the past years, since I started making comics, there has definitely been even more a shift to that the media is really interested in it. And before that, there was already the whole development. I mean, I think this independent comic market in Germany, where it wasn't like superheroes and Marvel and stuff, it started only in the 90s with some people like Anka Feuchtenberger or Henning Wagenbrett and others, and they kind of started this like avant-garde comic scene. And from there, because then they went to the universities, and there were university courses in comic, and I think that's how the scene got a little bigger and bigger, and more comics like this were made. And I think but I'm really optimistic that it's getting even bigger and even more popular, and that would be really cool.
Yeah, let's hope so, because it's really interesting media actually. And I kind of liked how last time we met you said that you have to read a comic book a little bit different than normal, that you have to somehow work with the image and with the word together. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what I heard from a few people who read, because my book obviously is like my family, for example, or others who have read a comic for the first time because they read my book, because they're older or they're just not really into comics or they haven't really read it. They were like, this is really difficult. I had to read it twice because I first read all the bubbles and then I read the images, and I was like, that's not really how it's supposed to. I mean, you can do it, but I think it's kind of practice to read both together. And then when you get used to reading it like this, it's really cool, because then the image can tell something else, and the text another thing, so it can like go hand in hand in a way, and then it's really good.
You basically have to focus on two things together. Like you have to focus on some details in the drawing and then on the text, and somehow mix it together in your head. And how important is for your work the research, and do you cooperate with somebody when you are creating new story?
No, research is really important, I think, or it's like because I until now have only done a non-fiction comic work, so it's really important for me to kind of get the facts straight. And mostly I have not worked in teams on my comics. Like on this one, I haven't, and I did the research and I wrote the book and then I drew it. But I have twice worked with journalists on very short comics. So the journalist would research and write the story, and then we worked together. And that was also, I must say, really cool, because then you have more time to kind of concentrate on the drawing. Also, you can kind of think about together on how to kind of tell the story. I think that was a lot of fun, but these were very short comics that we made together.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us how long did it take you to create all this book? And maybe can you divide it into, for example, the research period, then screenplay, and then drawing itself?
Yeah,
just roughly. It doesn't have to be
specific. The thing with this book is that I started it in 2016, and then I did some research, and then I also already started drawing. And in 2017, I completely began new, because I felt like I didn't have enough research. I didn't had enough research to base the book on. And also I was in a residency that summer in Sitka, Alaska, where there were a few journalists also, and they kind of said, well, how did you go about the research? And I was like, well, I read this book, and then they were like, well, you can do so much research in this topic, because it sounds like something really big, and you can really look into it more. And then I did like a year only of research, and then I started to write the storyboard. Wrote the script. That was quite fast, I think. That was only 3 to 4 months, or 3 months, I think. And then in the beginning of 2019, I started to draw the whole storyboard. And then it was a process of, I think, 8 months to bounce it back, because I was really lucky to work with a editor. I think we said last time that it would be editor. And he and we kind of like bounced it back, and he said like, well, here needs to be another scene, or here we need to change, and then we kind of talked it through. This was like 8 months, and then the storyboard was there, and from that point on it was only drawing, and the drawing part was from November 2019 until I think September 2020, the full time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You said that you were drawing one page per day, right?
Yeah. I was for these months I was drawing 1 page a day.
Mm-hmm.
I tried. I mean, these were like 11-hour days. So sorry.
Yeah. Wow, 11 hours a day.
Yeah, it was horrible. But I must say that's nothing that it wasn't sustainable in any way. So it couldn't be done forever. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Like many authors are saying that it's not sustainable to be a comic book author, actually.
Yeah, that also.
Yeah. But I guess that if you can change it to something else and not be so tired from it, and it can be, it can be done once in a while.
If it's a shorter book, for example, then you don't have this has 230 pages or something, 240. So a shorter book might be just a little bit less of a massive thing you have to draw. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And you have been nominated for this book for Leibinger Award. Did it help you somehow, or did it open some doors?
That was actually with the first draft of the book. So that was in 2017 when I kind of started again, and that was so there's some finalists, and I was a finalist of this award, and it was really, really good because actually the publisher that in the end now published the book kind of reached out to me because of this finalist prize, because he saw it and he really was interested in the topic. And actually from that moment on, we were kind of in contact with the book. So I always sent him updates on what I'm doing and where I'm at. And so that was really helpful. Yeah.
And how do you work? What creative process do you work for you?
So I think what I realized quite early on in my university is when I started with comic courses, that I know a lot of my fellow students, they came from drawing kind of, which never really worked for me. I didn't, because I didn't really know where to start with something, and then when I just do. So for me, it was always I start from writing or at least researching. Like if I first need to kind of know what the story is, and when I know what the story is, there's a lot of research going into it, and then within the research there are already images in my head, but and then I write it down, and I always have a notebook for this stuff, and then I write everything down and have like a lot of notes. I also actually have a lot of stuff on my computer, so if I start a new project, I have like a lot of Word documents with notes, which is kind of annoying. Then I print them out and then I have them like but it's always from the like writing, and then actually the last thing is then when I have the writing and the script, I start my storyboard, and in the storyboard then this starts like I think that's the most difficult thing, because then you kind of have to combine the text with the image, and then you really need to think about what images can I use. And there I also use I have a lot of books that I then look into, like also art books, or I also use a lot of Google Images and just Google some random words and look what comes up, or I go into, I also have a lot of old dictionaries that are illustrated. So sometimes I also look for words. I don't like something like this. And then and then after the storyboard, that work is kind of like the one where you can listen to audiobooks and chill.
Yeah, and just draw 8 months
in
a row.
Draw. In the end, actually, of the last book, I didn't even listen to audiobooks anymore. I just listened to like a children's cassette that I used to listen to when I was a child, and I was like just listening and drawing because my mind was so broken.
It had to be calming, like
it had to be something where it just really was like zoned out and just had to do it. Harry Potter also was something that I then listen to in these moments.
And you have to as well do lots of research, I mean like visually, right? Like if you're working with history, you have to like find the clothes and the I don't know, the buildings and
this can be really difficult if it's something like I had this so much now also with like smaller comic projects, but so what actually did these things already exist in this time? It's like the last thing I had was a telephone in the 1920s. And it's like, I have no idea if they even had. So then also it needs to be German telephone. So this is like and this is basically just a tiny little thing hanging in a room. So, but still it needs to be right. So this is our I think it's quite fun because that way you kind of have like a catalog of random things from times, but I always save them in folders on my computer, or I sometimes also have books where I can look up things. I have a lot of books, historic ones with images, like photo books, where this can be helpful. But this is a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine that it's only detail, that in some scene, just telephone hanging on the wall. Yeah. But then you can be stuck for 2 days on it, like finding the specific type.
And in the last book, it was also that, for example, this was quite interesting because somebody said to me that they really liked the clothes that the people are wearing in the book, and that they really liked it because people in the 70s were actually wearing clothes like that, and this was a lot. And I was really happy that he said it, because it was kind of that when you just Google people in the 70s, you either find these hippies with like trousers like this and like these flurry vests or whatever, and nobody who just went to school actually looked like it. So this is like watching documentaries and films and stuff from the time to see, okay, how did they actually look like? So
when we met before, we were talking about the fact that you're very interested in these topics in history, and you can see it as some kind of lost images and lost stories. What is interesting there for you?
Yeah, I think that kind of looking at history is always looking at now as well. In a way, it's looking at things that happened before kind of tells us a lot about what's happening now. I think it's true for a lot of things, like lessons we can take from the 20th century. There are even books written about it. What can we learn from history? In a way, so I think that's really important, and also then the remembering aspects, like how do we remember things, and what should we remember, what might be forgotten. And I think a lot of things have been forgotten in history that just haven't really been dug up yet, and they all deserve attention, I think, and I think I said when we met before also that I think that through graphic narration or comics, you can kind of look at these events and digest them through images again, and maybe it's easier to digest these through images, like in a comic, especially with serious and sad and horrible stories, maybe that were horrible in history or events, and that people maybe not want to read about, like these conscientious objectors trials. It sounds really boring, but then when you look at it and you kind of look at it through these images and through the story, it might then be interesting for people now. So I think that's really important to me to kind of do that with history further.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. It was very nice. Do you have some kind of tips for other illustrators? What do you do when you have no idea what to draw, or you are stuck that you don't feel inspired?
Get away from the desk, definitely. I think there's nothing worse than sitting at the desk and looking at a blank piece of paper and then just wasting a day. I think when I usually go for walks then, I think that's the most helpful thing that I can do. I think it helps me to then go outside and then usually the ideas come when you're outside somewhere and if it really just feels horrible, then I meet friends. Because also this work is can be really lonely in a way. I also I sit in my studio alone, and I think sometimes just get outside and either alone or meet people or whatever, and then come back to it. I think that's what I do. I also, if that's not an option, I also watch films if I'm stuck. I think look at get a cool film that I kind of think it's interesting, then I watch it, and then the inspiration kind of comes back sometimes.
And do you have some daily routine? I mean, drawing routine?
Yes, I try. It's different when I worked on the book, I got up at 6 and then did some sport, and then I started drawing. So this this was a routine. Now, I mean, it's now different when I'm very early riser, so I still get up very early. But now it's different how much you draw and because some projects are shorter, and then either you write or I usually like to draw in the afternoon. So I like better to draw in the afternoon than the morning, because the morning kind of, if I have something to write or something else to do, I like to do that better in the morning. And then the afternoon and the evening, I like to draw. Mm-hmm. If I really have to just work through something. Yeah.
Right now you are studying at Royal College of Arts in London. Can you tell us more about this program? What do you do there?
Yeah, sure. So this is a Master of Research program. So I'm researching, or I actually do research into what I do the whole time. So I'm researching how comic or graphic narrative is used in historical topics or themes. So how we can kind of retell history through comics and graphic narration, very broadly. But I will research it with a topic that I will then kind of turn into a graphic narrative. So kind of looking for methods on how to do it. I think that would be the best. I mean, we already talked through a lot of methods like visual research, or this is like the method section, and you basically in the theoretical part list what your methods are, and then the practical work is a comic basically. So this is and it's a master's degree in the end, but a research master. So it's like a little bit seen as a preparation for a PhD, which I'm not about to do, but it's interesting. And obviously I can't be in London right now. I'm in Hamburg because of the pandemic. But I will be back in summer, hopefully, because it looks like they're kind of partying on the streets in London.
And I guess these online lessons and studying is not very good for nobody.
No, for us, I mean, it's not great for anybody. I think for art schools, it's particularly ridiculous because kind of you are dependent on the studios and the workspaces and the workshops and stuff. So art university online, it's not really great, but yeah.
And what topics basically are you interested in? Like maybe what would be the ideal dream job for you?
Difficult question. I mean, I love all kinds of historic topics. Actually, if maybe if sometimes I think maybe if a historian came up to me and said, "Hey, I have this topic, let's do it together," because then I think it would be really cool to kind of learn from how a historian really researches. Because now I do the research, but I do it I'm a illustrator, so I'm not really a professional historian or researcher in any way. So I do it myself, but I think this, like, working with somebody who really knows how to do it, and this would be, I think, really interesting for me.
Okay, fingers crossed for that.
Yeah.
So you can be expert, like graphic novel expert, and everybody's in history field is going just to you. And okay, we are on the waiting list for Hanna.
Yeah, I said the other day, the job title then would be like a comic historian or something.
Wow, it sounds cool.
Fun. It does.
It can exist.
Yeah. I don't know, but it sounds funny.
Yeah, why not? Maybe this is like a new form for children, because like it can a little bit put some spice on history, which can be boring sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. Sure, that is. I remember my history books; they were awful. So I think there can be some spicing up in history lessons, I guess. Yeah.
I think this is a good idea. Okay, so thank you very much for this interview. It was really nice to meet you.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you.